Quick takes. I'm your host, Anthony Wright, coming to you from the cloudy and dreary but spring-like confines of Langston, New Jersey. Wherever you may be watching or listening, I thank you as always. Like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel. You can check the Blunt Talk Sports Podcast. More importantly, Blunt Talk Quick Takes out exclusively here on Podbean. However, if you are looking to check out regular other videos of the Blunt Talk Sports Podcast or other content, you can check the show out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Substack, Trovo, and I thank you guys as always for plugging in and being, the great guests that you are. And without you guys, this wouldn't be possible. Yesterday was the year anniversary of the podcast. I was definitely plugging away, getting some videos out. I did a couple shorts. I got some jam-packed videos that I'm dropping this afternoon, and I'm excited for you guys to definitely check out. Definitely make sure you comment, like, share, and subscribe. Getting to this episode, though, a lot of information that came out yesterday going into the wee hours in the morning from the episodes that I previously did. So I want to make sure that I touch base here. We're going to start with our NBA recap, pretty much our Game 82 finale and play-in tournament preview, and details and setup and how all that's going to come about. First things first, I want to make sure that we state that it was crazy as hell how finally for me, for the first time in years, it seemed like the Western Conference, or more or less the NBA, had something to actually fight for or give a damn about towards the end of the year. There wasn't a situation where the NBA could afford to, just gamble and say, hey, we'll put these teams on. Everything's kind of sewn up. But in fairness, most things usually in the NBA are sewn up way before now. Like we kind of know who's winning the divisions. We kind of know who's going to be, in the playoffs. We know the seeding. It's pretty much there. With the whole play-in thing, the bottom half, was still in flux, but the top part of the order was pretty much set. The West has been a mess this year. The Western Conference, and I don't mean mess in a derogatory way. I mean a mess in the aspect of it literally was questions of who was where and where was, where seeding was going to be located, where teams were going to be where, who was still in play-in contention, who was knocked out of playoff contention. Well documented. The Suns were knocked out some days prior, and it just had the NBA in flux. But it was an exciting time. All that to be said, exciting thing to catch, and to watch. All that being said, though, we're going to hop into the games from Sunday. We're going to start with Clippers and Warriors, which I thought was one of the most exciting games of the season. I'm glad that was Game 82. I almost felt like I was back in a time machine from 7 years ago where I'm watching Kawhi Leonard in his prime and James Harden in his prime and Steph Curry in his prime playing at, phenomenal levels. I mean, even Jimmy Butler had a great performance. It was just great. It was fantastic to see. The Clippers were able to pull off the victory with 124 to 119, sending the Warriors to the play-in tournament to play the Memphis Grizzlies. We'll touch on the Grizzlies in a second, but heartbreaking if you're the Warriors. You definitely fought hard to try to make the playoffs and not have to go through the play-in again. But it seems like the Warriors just cannot escape the NBA play-in tournament. They were knocked out last year by my Sacramento Kings. In the year prior, they had to play in the play-in tournament to get in. So no shots here. This is just kind of familiar territory for them. But, essentially the Warriors will be back there. The Clippers, however, have won their right to be the fifth seed, and they will play the Denver Nuggets in the first round. So definitely a difficult matchup for the Clippers, but they've been a phenomenal team all year. Probably one of the most under the radar teams, and I said it previously. I do think the Clippers and the Timberwolves are probably the biggest dark horse candidates in the Western Conference outside of, the Lakers, Thunder, and the Nuggets. But I do think that the Clippers have had a legitimate shot this year to surprise some people in the Western Conference. Going a bit further, then we have the other Western Conference playoff game. Actually, we're going to go to the Sacramento Kings, my beloved Sacramento Kings, playing the Phoenix Suns. The Sacramento Kings were able to defeat the Phoenix Suns 109 to 98. That being said, the Suns pretty much knew their season was over. They didn't really have much to play for. So going into it, there was no Devin Booker. We didn't even see Bradley Beal. It was essentially just, the backups of the backups plan. This game was never really in question or in doubt. Sacramento pretty much had this game the whole way. I mean, at one point, I think early on, the Kings were up by 10 plus or 12 plus. So never really was in question. Now, the funny thing about it is, though, that being that Sacramento won this game, this gave them the right to play the Dallas Mavericks. Now, why are they going to be playing the Dallas Mavericks? They're going to be playing the Dallas Mavericks strictly because the Mavericks played the Memphis Grizzlies on Sunday and were completely eviscerated by the Mavericks. The Mavericks were completely eviscerated by the Grizzlies, 132 to 97. It was a dire showing, very, 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 very disgusting. If you're a Mavs fan, but the Mavs have kind of been in a nuclear tailspin since the end of, well, really since the All-Star break. I mean, if you take into consideration, you have Luka Doncic being traded, you have the aspect of AD getting injured, you have Kyrie Irving tearing his ACL. It's just a situation where the Mavs have just been waiting for this season to end. It's been a bleed out, not to, to take a line from Devin Booker, but it's been a slow bleed out for the Mavericks all year, and they're just pretty much waiting for it to end. So the way the play-in tournament matchups are set up for tomorrow, the Sacramento Kings will play the Dallas Mavericks in the 9-10 matchup, and the Golden State Warriors will play the Memphis Grizzlies in the 7-8 matchup. I'm very much looking forward to these games. My predictions I got the Kings beating the Mavericks, as previously stated. I think the Mavericks have just been in a tailspin. They clearly are not in the right state of mind or equipped talent wise to beat any of these teams. And the Kings have had the Mavericks number all season. So I definitely expect it will be very, very fucking disappointing if Sacramento loses this game. But I expect Sacramento to pull this game out. And now when we swing to the Warriors and Grizzlies, I expect the Warriors to win that game. Strictly because the Grizzlies have been in a similar situation. Very immature, very, lack of focus, very much a lack of focus, you know, they haven't really beat any good teams throughout the whole year. Second half of the season, they very much struggled. So I don't really see them beating the Warriors, who have been in this position, are very comfortable playing in the play-in tournament, and the Grizzlies are playing for their supper. So I definitely think that this is going to go to the Warriors. So just to do a quick recap, I have the Kings beating the Mavericks in the 9-10 matchup to advance to go play the Oklahoma City Thunder, where I do believe that the Kings will lose that first round matchup. And I have the Golden State Warriors playing the Grizzlies and beating the Grizzlies and advancing to play the Houston Rockets in the second round, where I do think the Rockets would lose that matchup to the Warriors just because of youth and experience. Definitely want to make sure too that we talk about some coaching news here. It's been well documented, guys. So follow it, follow me on YouTube if you hadn't seen it. I posted a video about Mike Budenholzer being fired after one season in Phoenix and signing a 5-year deal. And it's just miraculous. And this man is 4 years removed after winning a championship, and he completely got the blame for that debacle of a fucking season that this team had. Matt Ishbia is doing what he has to do. Like I said, he's going to clean house. I'm pretty sure more heads of the roll. You definitely cannot roll it back with what you had this previous season and think that that's enough. It clearly isn't. Definitely is not. Also, Chauncey Billups. I want to make sure I give Chauncey Billups, excuse me, his shout out. Chauncey Billups signed a contract extension with the Blazers, where he is now going to be there for another 4 years. I give Chauncey Billups so much credit because that team was supposed to be an abject dumpster fire when he was the coach, when he first became the coach. No one really expected him to hang on this long and to get this team playing competitive basketball. I give him a shitload of credit. He has them where their future is bright. They're not contending. They weren't going to win the Western Conference. Hell, they weren't even going to make the playoffs. But the fact that they won over 30 games this year is remarkable. He deserves acknowledgement for it. And as they accrue talent and get that roster better and in a better position to win, I do think that they will be a problem. I love the way that he coaches. I love his philosophy and mindset. And I just feel like right now they're going to be in a situation where going forward, they definitely are going to be a team to reckon with in the Western Conference. Going forward here, we're going to get into some NFL news. I'm going to touch on Jalen Ramsey and the Miami Dolphins and the fallout of that craziness. Jalen Ramsey and the Miami Dolphins have agreed for Jalen Ramsey to seek a trade. This is kind of crazy coming off the backs of the fact that Jalen Ramsey has signed an extension in September, making him the highest paid cornerback in the NFL. That being said, they couldn't agree to a contract reduction, which this tells me. And also, too, the culture in Miami is shot. For them to really make any headway and to really, really, headway, excuse me, and to really make any change legitimately to be a more valuable and formidable franchise, they have to get off guys like this in these contracts. I thought it was a disaster giving him the money in the first place anyway. He hasn't really played at an outstanding level since the Rams. Now, I know he's made the Pro Bowl since then, but I think, now you kind of make the Pro Bowl more or less off name and fanfare than anything else. But he just came off with his worst statistical season he's had in years. So very interesting to see. And then the Dolphins pretty much fucked themselves in this situation because how do you get off of that cap? I mean, looking here, I have to look back at the numbers, but it's a very high cap number. I do believe you're ready to make him like a post June 1 cut, Just very, 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 very weird situation for the Miami Dolphins. Not really sure what they were thinking or how they went about it, but they clearly didn't go into it with the right mindset. You paid Jalen Ramsey, you gave him all this money, and now you're going to get off of him because you didn't really retool the roster in the proper ways. And yeah, looking here, that contract, it's 24.3 million in 2025 with a cap number of roughly 16.6 million. And if the Dolphins do find a trade partner, they would clear about 8.5 million in salary cap space in 2025 if he was designated as a pre-June 1 cut or trade, excuse me. So they're going to probably have to wait to get off of him. I know the game plan is to definitely try to move him before then, but this shit's crazy. This year he's due 21.1 million. These numbers are coming via Michael Sinetti from SpotRec.com. Jalen Ramsey's due 21.1 million this year, 21 million next year, 21.7 in 2027, and 24 million in 2028. Now, there's funny money things and dead cap structure going on here that you got to dive into with this contract, which could essentially make his contract a pay as you go type contract, or it could be a thing where the new team gets it and leaves it as is or rips it up and may have to do a new contract. But essentially, the new team that would be taking on his salary this year would be they'd be essentially on the books for a 1 year, $21.1 million contract. And like I said, the remaining 3 years are set up as a pay-as-you-go structure. Now, I know Pro Football Focus ranked him as the number 10 quarterback in 2024. That's false. He did not play at a high level at all. He did not play at a high level. This is why this conversation of contract reduction was even in his face. So definitely shocking there, but I definitely expect Jalen Ramsey to covet something on the market. As far as the Dolphins, like I said, this is all they're doing by just lack of bad management and letting Christian Wilkins walk, letting guys like Calais Campbell walk, letting guys like Javon Holland walk. And again, the culture. Vic Fangio just won a Super Bowl in Philadelphia with young guys, coaching a young defense. And these are the same guys a year ago bitching about his coaching style being too old school and too brash and too tactful. Yeah. So it says a lot. It really says a lot about them more than any of these guys that they've let go. It just shows you how inept of a franchise and how far they've fallen. They are completely in a rebuild, and I think they have to come to grips with this. And this is the first step to acknowledging it. I definitely think now this makes you wonder if Tyreek Hill is next. Next in the NFL world, we're going to Saints quarterback, Derek Carr. Now, what is interesting here, Derek Carr, real weird. Friday afternoon, late news dump where, you get news that, the injury with his shoulder is kind of a little bit more severe than they expected. And it's potentially a chance that it could affect his 2025 season. Weird as hell that just came out of nowhere. The timing of the news, and the injury, which makes you wonder, like, well, if he's had this shoulder injury now for a couple of months, why is he waiting to now to acknowledge this and just get it worked on? Definitely a red flag there. But as you read some of the reports and look at some of the sourcing comes from Chris Sims on Pro Football Talk, some of it from some of the various websites. But essentially, the Saints were never in love with Derek Carr. He was the worst case scenario type situation where they just made do with what they had. They never really had any intention of keeping him long term. And essentially, I think this is Derek Carr kind of fighting back and letting it be known that he's not going to go quietly. And he's not going to be disrespected in a way like this that he has been, which is kind of funny because I think Derek Carr has been living off a lot of that old Raiders glory because when he was there, they were trash and he was fighting hard. But this guy is definitely stolen money. He's definitely not lived up to any of the hype that he was projected to be. He was definitely an abject failure with Devontae Adams a couple years ago. So I'm definitely not shocked that they're trying to get off of him. Now, the question is, are they locked in on Shadeur Sanders? I think that they always had been, looking at Shadeur Sanders. I think that it always had been a possibility. I just think that now, because this news broke the way it did, this could be a situation where maybe Carr and his agent are trying to fuck the Saints over and make sure the Saints aren't able to get Shadeur Sanders. Or maybe a situation where the Saints are kind of letting it be known, like, hey, we really do like Shadeur at this spot. We will take him. Remains to be seen. But craziness all amongst the NFL right now. Before we depart NFL, I want to give a last bit of NFL news on this episode. Will be the Bears agreeing to a 3-year extension with their slot corner, Kyle Gordon, affectionately known by Bears fans as Spider-Man. He is now the NFL's highest paid slot corner. Interesting enough, doing research looking this up, I found out he was Ryan Poles' first draft pick, which is very interesting to know. He's under contract until 2028, $40 million guaranteed, $40 million deals, excuse me. Essentially, he has 31.25 guaranteed. So shout out to Kyle Gordon, aka Spider-Man, for getting his extension. I like what Chicago's doing. Chicago's making sure the guys that played well and stepped up and did what they needed to do are getting paid. Outside of that, not really sure how all that's going to work out, but they're making sure they're paying the guys or stepping up and showing and proving themselves in Chicago. I definitely like the outlook of this team going into next season. I think Ben Johnson, this front office, has his team with a breath of fresh air, right mindset type of feel. Heading back to the NBA real quick, we're going to hop into some news that actually dropped late yesterday afternoon, but I definitely want to make sure I touched on it today. Former Vice President of Basketball Operations, David Griffin, was fired after missing the playoffs 4 times in the past 6 years with the New Orleans Pelicans. So definitely not good there. This was definitely expected. They had second worst record, excuse me, in the Western Conference, or if not the NBA. So this was definitely expected. Zion Williamson was out most of the year again due to health and injury concerns. This begs the question, and it's going to loom large over this franchise. There's rumors that Joe Dumars is going to come in at potentially as GM. But if you're the Pelicans, if you're Joe Dumars, do you keep Zion Williamson? I'm going on the record to say that you have to get off Zion. You have to rebuild this roster, this team, as it's currently constructed, and get something for him. The experiment doesn't work. You've given him opportunity and time. He hasn't gotten healthy for whatever reasons, weight, baby mama drama, stalker shit, whatever it is. It just has not worked out. It has not worked out at all. I mean, I feel bad, most importantly, too, for Willie Green, Coach Willie Green. He coached his team up to the best of his abilities, did the best that he could. He's dealt with injuries and adversity. Not having a star player for most of the season is crazy work. And then not having the proper, guys and the roster around him is all, part of the front office, which is the reason why David Griffin got fired. So definitely expect it, but I expect to see more heads roll there. Definitely Willie Green and possibly some more guys. And of course, what we'll have with Zion will be the largest question looming for the rest of the season for the Pelicans, off season that is. Heading into the MLB, we're going to touch on something dear and dear to my heart. Captain of the Yankees and one of my favorite players, Aaron Judge, announced that he is going to make his Team USA debut in 2026 World Baseball Classic. Now, this is major news because he's the second Yankees captain since Derek Jeter to join, which I think is fantastic news. Let you know, Team USA pays attention to the Yankees and more or less pays attention to the best Yankee players and wants to make sure those guys are getting their proper acknowledgement on the world stage. Also, Team USA will be a member of Pool B. So what that means is they will play Brazil, Great Britain, Italy, and Mexico. Mexico's usually our stiffest competition within there. So interesting to see. I'm definitely excited for Aaron Judge to see him play in the World Baseball Classic. I saw the coaching staff that they have assembled, and I'm excited to see what lineup of guys step up and step out to play in the World Baseball Classic. Last but not least, this is an article per The Athletic that I definitely want to touch on. It's early in the year, but the pressure is on for a lot of coaches already. I mean, this article, it touched on 9 MLB managers on the brink of being fired by the end of the season. I know, crazy work already. We're only like 15, 20 games in, and we're already talking about guys being fired, but it's been that bad and that putrid for a lot of franchises, so far, and a lot of baseball clubs this season so far. I didn't go over all 9 managers because some of the managers have winning records and it's more or less contractual lame duck things, hierarchical differences. So I didn't want to dive into the weeds and bore you or inundate you with that. I just more or less wanted to talk on the guys who I definitely think will possibly get fired based on what their team is doing at this current moment. I'm not going to go based off the worst record first. I'm just going to go off the names that I wrote down. Rocco Baldelli, manager of the Twins, 5-11 to start the season. They're coming off a horrific year last year where they blew a 92% chance to make the postseason. Yikes. Lack of attendance and low ratings is truly affecting this baseball club. So if they don't turn it around in any way, shape, or form soon, he's definitely going to be gone. Oily Marmol, manager of the Arizona Cardinals. I said Arizona Cardinals. Please curse my mouth. Please forgive me. Oily Marmol, manager of the St. Louis Cardinals baseball club. They're currently 7-8 to start the season. Right now, though, there's a lot of speculation that Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina, former Hall of Fame catcher and Hall of Fame first baseman, are both want to manage this club. I think that if you're just out of respect, you definitely want to have those conversations with those guys. So it puts Marmol in a situation where, kind of a lame duck season. But if he gets his team to play any type of decent baseball, could possibly potentially change his fortunes. So keep an eye on an asterisk there by Marmal, could potentially change his fortunes. This guy, I definitely think is going to possibly get fired. Strong chance. Derek Shelton, manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're 5-11 currently. Owner Bob Nutting, as we know, is a fucking cheapskate. And also, he had him and GM Ben Sherrington are currently in flux. He's kind of stated previously to start the season that he felt like he put a proper roster in place to have this team win. That is yet to be determined, but as the results currently are stated, that is not the case. They're always getting rid of talent. They have a history of this. Garrett Cole comes to mind. Obviously, they didn't keep him. And a lot of guys they didn't retain. McCutchen, the list goes on. I mean, there's no pipeline of future talent. So kind of in a fuck situation if you're Pittsburgh, So what do you do if you're Bob Nutting? Do you fire Derek Shelton when really it's not really Derek Shelton's fault and he doesn't really have a roster that he needs? Or is it that Bob Nutting just has to accept that he's comfortable in mediocrity? I don't know. But it's going to be interesting to see. Next was Bud Black, manager of the Colorado Rockies. They're currently 3-12. This is probably the most dire situation. Bud Black has made the playoffs in his first two seasons, that being the 17 and 18 seasons. They have had 6 straight losing seasons since 2018. He's currently 67 years old. The organization loves him. However, how long can this losing continue? Currently, the heir apparent in the organization is Warren Schaefer. He's currently the third base coach and has coached and pretty much managed in all levels for the Rockies organization. So I think Bud Black is going to have a little bit of a leash with a very short one. They like the guy. They like what he's done for the organization and team. He's a class act. But, being 3-12 and in Colorado where there's so many other things to do and then, and not have to worry about the Rockies. So, yeah, kind of a tricky situation there if you're Colorado. Rounding up the last two, we have Ron Washington of the Angels. Now, Ron Washington's the only coach on this list that actually had a very good record. His team is currently constructed at 9-6. He's in the final year of his contract, so it's kind of possibly a lame duck situation. He's 5th Angels manager since 2018, so that just tells you how bad the situation's been there in Anaheim. And he's 73 years old, so he's the oldest manager in the majors. All signs indicate that he's possibly going to be his last season, but being that this team is winning, I'm not sure management's going to be quick to pull the trigger because they have been bad for the past 6-7 years. So, it's in a situation where it's like, we may have to just keep them because where's the other option? And last but not least, rounding up this list of managers on the hot seat is Brandon Hyde of the Baltimore Orioles. Now, currently constructed, the Baltimore Orioles are 6-9. This team has been collapsing since the middle of last year. They started off with so much hype at the beginning of last year and just kind of faded and have not been the same since. And it's remarkable because since 2023, this team has won a lot of games. I believe they're first or second in wins, which is kind of startling in itself. It's 2 years of great baseball that they played. But I think managerial-wise, the lack of experience could be a factor that they can't escape. And it may put them in a situation where they may have to get rid of the coach to try to save the season. But that's going to do it for this episode of Blunt Talk Quick Takes, guys. I love you guys as always for plugging in. It's again, like, share, and subscribe. Take care.